Day 7 of our investigation, and as the new year looms just over the horizon, it seems that we are still stuck at a dead end in trying to locate Emma. With Isabella still comatose and Bonehead nowhere to be found, we instead spent much of yesterday learning more about the Death Journey ritual and coming to terms with the fact that, indeed, someone is trying to recreate that ritual that Cougar performed almost 40 years ago. To make matters worse, we also learn that there is a deadline to perform this ritual that is coming up on this very night with the full moon. So for much of our morning, there isn't going to be too much we need to do. Just getting our normal morning ritual out of the way. And really just starting to wonder if the new coming year might mean good or bad things for our poor protagonist here, Matthew. I mean, we've already uncovered so many dark secrets in this town, it seems pretty difficult that we'll be able to look at this place the same ever again. Besides getting our morning ritual out of the way, though, there was another reason we did want to wake up a little bit early, and that's so we don't miss a phone call. Unexpectedly, we do get a call from Captain Nas inside the store. And he is calling because we have an unexpected visitor at the store. Yeah, even though we had a bit of a heated argument last night with Dr. James at his house, he has decided to pay us a visit. Didn't really think he did house calls, but I don't know. Sure he has some important reason for wanting to see us. And I think even Captain Nas was a bit surprised to see Dr. James turn up at his store so very early in the morning. Seems, though, that Dr. James is wanting to let bygones be bygones and assist us in our investigation into the Death Journey ritual by lending us that book he was reading last night. And I do sincerely appreciate the gesture that he's trying to do here, especially since the Death Journey ritual is pretty much the main focus point we want to be dealing with right now and trying to locate Emma. Now, something I haven't really attempted to do for pretty much every video so far is that you can interact with the bookcase here in Matthew's room. It's just there's really not too much to be gained from it. I think the only book he manages to pull out, I think, is Hamlet, because it quotes to be or not to be, which, considering all the existential what is life type of questions that the game proposes, that does kind of make a bit of sense. Beyond that, though, James decides to go into his usual awkward tangents here by... I guess he does have a somewhat good point in that, it's what happens in our past that kind of shapes our future and kind of determines what our moralistic values going forward are. We learn from our parents learn from their parents, and so on and so forth. It's a great cycle of learning and knowledge and growing over time that, we in our present are more or less, housing for all those thousands of lifetimes past. Matthew doesn't really take all that in, though, which is completely fine. Just can't get over the fact that it really feels like Dr. James just never gets out of his condescending, I guess, mood. Beyond all that, though, we do get pretty much normal information here. Isabella is still not conscious yet. I'm sure if she was conscious, we would have been the first people to hear about it. Dr. James does manage to bring up one more important point here, in that, well, aside from Sandman, who we already knew was holding Isabella captive, and Dennis, there must be someone else waiting in the wings to try to finish off Isabella. So, any visitors that she might have might be very important to learning about this case, so it might really be worth swinging by the hospital to check with that deputy to see if there has been any visitors to her room. And with that gracious gift of the book and that bit of parting knowledge that we should probably try to follow up with Emma a little bit more, yeah, Dr. James takes his leave. The thing is, we do not want to head to the hospital just yet. We actually want to wait quite a bit of time before we head off to the hospital. Because there is one person in particular we want to make sure is at the hospital when we head over there. Now, we aren't going to be getting a direct call from this person. Instead, we are going to want to make an outgoing call. And that outgoing call will be to the gas station where Winona's parents work and where she happens to live. By calling there, we are informed by her father that Winona is already at the hospital, and that he definitely feels a lot of concern with the fact that his young daughter is investigating a murder/kidnapping/drug ring, so he's hoping that Matthew might be able to swing by and make sure that she is totally okay. And it definitely does work out for us, because that's exactly where we were planning on heading. Now, you might be wondering, with all these large gaps in time over this day and the previous day, that we might be missing out on any vital clues. As far as I know, we are not. We've honestly burned through quite a few suspects and leads at this point. We don't really have too many other avenues to go with the investigation. It's more or less just waiting for Isabella to wake up. And even at such a late point in the day, she is still very much unconscious. Out of nowhere, though, Wolf manages to show up. Not completely unheard of, considering what we already know about Isabella and Wolf's relationship. What would him being kind of her being her benefactor in town. But I think we already have a lot of apprehension about Wolf here and his, I guess, turning a blind eye to Isabella's, I guess, drug wrangling that she was doing. And to make matters worse, he poses the fact that he only came to visit her to see if she had woken up so she could get back to work making him all that money at the bar. While he does try to brush it off as just merely a joke, it's really hard to look past the fact that he is a pretty skeezy character all in all. And more than likely, the underworld connections he has and all the knowledge he has about illicit goings-on in town, that he might have a bigger part in all that. Now, up to this point, Winona has never really met Wolf. We've never really had her interact with him. But this isn't really the first time that she's seen him before. No, the first time she really recalls seeing Wolf was when she went to Emma that one night at the bar. Because it ended up being Wolf that managed to step in and save Emma. I guess she did not have a fork handy at that time. Now, Matthew does have a good reason as to why Wolf might have stepped in. He is the proprietor of the establishment. It's just that Winona kind of took it a different way. He honestly felt like Wolf had a sincere investment in Emma's well-being. Yeah, to the point that she almost seemed like precious cargo. Very mysterious, especially up to this point we really haven't heard Wolf make any other mentions about really having any investments in Emma's well-being. There was also the thing that Dr. James had mentioned where more than likely anybody that would try to come visit Isabella here probably has some deep connection to our investigation and case. And from talking to the deputy here, he mentions that there was one person that did make a visit, and our first assumption is that a shady character could very well be Wolf. It could be maybe some other person in town. We haven't become met yet, I guess. The important thing, though, is that Dr. Samuel, and all his good foresight, managed to block out any access to Emma's room from anyone outside of hospital staff. So the good news, all in all, is that Isabella should be completely safe here with this deputy at the door. Still not entirely sure about how I should take Wolf's visit, though. And fact of the matter is, I do want to kind of give him a piece of my mind with how he's been treating Isabella, and also just super surprised by the sheer amount of foot traffic here in the hospital, but we can't worry about that just yet. We need to catch up with Wolf. Because by doing so, we managed to stumble on a pretty suspicious scene here. That's right, the man we've been looking so hard for, Bonehead, just happens to be hanging out with Wolf. Obviously, that piques Matthew's interest. And it seems, honestly, the best course of action is to follow up and head to Bar Wolf to see if, I don't know, maybe Bonehead might be hanging out at the bar. But, as you might recall, the bar does not open till almost 8 p.m., so we do have to waste a little bit of time before we head over there. But once 8 p.m. does roll around, it's time to confront Wolf and try to get some more information about Bonehead. As a matter of fact, it also seems like Mel is here. Didn't honestly expect him to show up. Now, if you're wondering at all why Mel might have suddenly shown up at Bar Wolf on such a important evening, well, it will quickly become obvious as to why. Yeah, my normal assumption would be that Mel is just trying to cause some trouble and cause a ruckus, what with him being the town delinquent. Instead, as it turns out, he is on the lookout for somebody. And coincidentally, it happens to be the same person that we are also on the lookout for as well. More than likely, Mel is trying to get some payback for Bonehead leaving him up in the cabin to the fury of the local police. But I'm honestly wondering if, maybe since Matthew and him are also looking for Bonehead, maybe they can let bygones be bygones, join forces, and maybe beat some information out of Wolf here and the bodyguard that Isabella had. Before we can join in the fray, though, Sheriff Morgan does make a very sudden appearance here to break up the forthcoming barroom brawl. And it's only here that Wolf decides that I guess maybe he should not be serving anything to minors, but Morgan instead just wants to look the other way and try to get everything wrapped up as quickly as possible. Also, Morgan has absolutely no want to listen to anything Mel has to say. But before things can escalate any further, we get some extremely unexpected news in that Isabella has finally awoken. And obviously this is great news for Matthew because hopefully we can finally get some information about Emma. And likewise, you'd probably figure Morgan would want to get by there as quickly as possible to get the same information. Instead, it seems like his priorities are elsewhere, though. In lieu of trying to cover the most important case he's probably ever had to deal with, he instead is going to take Mel off to the sheriff's station, I guess, to throw him back into the cooler to hopefully cool off a bit. And it's not honestly very surprising considering all the crimes that Mel has done up to this point, but I still really can't help but want to shake Sheriff Morgan and say, you have more important things to be doing right now, man. Still, that's fine though, because Detective Matthew and Deputy Winona are on the case still, so while Sheriff Morgan goes to waste a bunch of time, we're gonna do the smart thing and head over to the hospital as quickly as we can to get that information out of Isabella. good news for us is that I've gone through town so many times it doesn't take that long to get over here. It seems that no matter how fast we go, we're always too late. Yeah, someone has already gone rampaging through the hospital ahead of us. And the most obvious target very much seems like Isabella. Now Matthew decides to do the smart thing and try to make a call to the sheriff's station to get Morgan over here as some backup. Main problem is that no one is picking up at the sheriff's station. I don't know if flowers are being attended to or Sheriff Morgan is downstairs in the basement. Just a very ramshackle little sheriff's station we have in town. Good news is that we can send Winona off to get that help while we try to stabilize things around here, try to figure out if Isabella is okay. I mean, if Isabella dies at this point, it seems like we are going to have no other avenues to really try to figure out where Emma is. And that pretty much seems like a game over situation to me. And it's a little bit disconcerting with how lively the hospital was just 30 minutes ago that everything seems so deathly quiet right now. The random patients milling about, the nurses here at the station, they're all just gone. Even the faithful deputy that we had so great hopes in protecting Isabella, seems like it was all for naught. As you can imagine, with the deputy slowly dying, he's not much in the way of help, outside of just reaffirming the fact that, indeed, the target was Isabella. We do get a very sudden clue about where Isabella might be, though, from her shriek just emanating throughout the hospital. I don't really feel like we missed anything down on the first floor, though. And that's because the screams are coming from even further down below, into the basement where we have yet to have ever set foot. Now, there's not much of a reason to come into the basement. The only thing really of note down here is the morgue, and that's honestly the only place we can even go down here. And it turns out that's exactly where we needed to head. Thing is, though, why would Isabella be down here bound and gagged? Well, the reason for that is pretty much obvious to everybody but Matthew. The though the truth quickly just smacks him right in the face. Yeah, as you probably could have guessed, the would-be, or actually the assassin in question, he's not really would-be, considering the people he has managed to kill, is indeed Bonehead. I suppose to some degree it could have been Sandman, considering that he is still somewhere out there on the loose, but yeah, I think the major concern right now is not where Sandman is, but how Matthew is going to be able to get out of this situation. It always seems like someone manages to show up at the last second to save him, but I'm not sure who could at this point. And to make matters worse, Bonehead is just admitting to even more crimes here. Appears that Dennis's suicide was, in actuality, a murder committed by Bonehead. Unexpectedly, though, our knight in shining armor shows up in the form of Dr. James. Didn't really expect him to be a gun-toting physician, but there you go. Strangely, though, he does let Bonehead go. Though he does state that he does have a plan, and that we can hopefully follow Bonehead to figure out where Emma might be. Still, even though Emma is freshly conscious, probably a bit traumatized from almost being killed for probably a second or third time within the last week, she is actually able to give us some somewhat useful information here. Namely the fact that Emma's time is very much run out, considering I think all the puzzle pieces are coming into play, and just I think Bonehead is running out of places to run. Also, it's revealed here that, yep, Wolf was pretty much controlling everything from the shadows, the drug organization. He was pulling all of Dennis's strings. He was the mastermind behind all the illicit machinations in town. And as if things couldn't get any worse for Wolf, he is also into white slavery, I guess. So, human trafficking can also go on that long list of horrible crimes that he has committed. And instead of being Isabella's benefactor, he has actually just been the one enslaving her to sell these drugs to all the kids. Strangely, we also learn that Emma knew all about Wolf's drug operation, and she didn't come forward to the cops. Instead, she seemed to actively, I guess, want to start taking the drugs. And while Isabella wants to kind of wallow in grief here and say that she was the one that caused all this and caused Emma to be entangled in all this, we pretty much know for certain now that Emma is not completely innocent in all this, though that shouldn't stop us from trying to save her. And we finally learned just exactly where Emma is right now. She was pretty much right under our nose, back at Aston's farm, right across from the Aston residence. Isabella's right, though. We can't just stay here trying to take care of her while Emma's chances of survival continue to diminish to nothing. And if you're worried about the fact that Matthew had to lend his car out to Winona to get to Sheriff Morgan, we don't really have to worry about that. Because Dr. James is more than willing to come with us to save Emma. And honestly, I feel a lot more at ease now knowing that we have, I guess, a gun-wielding partner to protect us. You know, there's been way too many times in this game when Matthew has almost been shot in the face and died. Now, a part of me wants to say that, I guess when Dennis had committed suicide, that the police had looked into the Aston farm over here, and I guess I can only assume that maybe they had only moved Emma over here recently, and that the police didn't just totally ignore and not really investigate the Aston farm over here, but for better or worse, we should hopefully be able to finally find Emma and put an end to all this as long as we quick enough on the draw, I guess. And speaking about being quick enough on the draw, I guess Dr. James heard about how well we took care of that bear, and he's more than willing to let us borrow the firearm that he has. And Dr. James shouldn't have any worry about that. We did not hesitate at all when it came to shooting that bear. With that, though, it's finally time to storm the barn and save Emma. Now, beyond catching Bonehead and Wolf pretty much red-handed with their crimes, more importantly, that's right, all of our hard work has finally paid off, and we have managed to find Emma alive and maybe not so well. She definitely seems worse for wear, considering she's probably been very ill-treated over the last 7 days. Sadly, our tearful reunion is going to have to take a backseat to some other more pressing matters that we have to take care of. Namely, just how we are going to deal with both Wolf and Bonehead here. Yeah, I feel like Wolf has a pretty valid reason to gloat here. It seems like for pretty much the entire length of the game, even though he has seemed, I guess, somewhat of a suspicious figure, Matthew never really had any suspicions about him, or neither did the local police, considering I don't really feel like Wolf is doing very well on the up and up end of his business. Also, we managed to kind of make it so that even if we had any hopes that Wolf might want to let us go, I think we honestly know way, way too much at this point regarding his drug trade, the human trafficking, the murders. Yeah, there's honestly no way that either me or Matthew or Emma are going to be able to get out of this alive. And in fact, we learned here that the entire reason that Emma was even taken was because she was going to squeal on the whole drug operation. And that the primary reason that she is still alive at this point, I guess, is because maybe Wolf wanted to use her as a replacement of sorts as his lover, maybe since Isabella was getting a bit too difficult to handle. Or maybe he just wants a whole harem of just drugged out, subservient women. I really do not want to know. In the end, though, he reveals that he did stumble across her just drugged out of her mind, disoriented on that Christmas Eve. And that in her vulnerable state, instead of, taking her to a hospital, instead he did what he does, and has been keeping her kidnapped and enslaved. Still, we aren't going to be able to do too much with this information if we are burned alive here in this barn. So Matthew decides to finally pull out his trump card. Though in the end, Wolf doesn't seem very perturbed about this in the least. And that's because he has pretty much a loaded hand as well. And his loaded hand beats our trump card pretty easily. And just like Kenny Rogers says, you gotta know when to hold them, you gotta know when to fold them, and after everything we've gone through, it would be pretty dire to lose Emma at this point. So there's really nothing else to do but give in to Wolf's demands. Bonehead, though, decides to indulge in his own bravado, maybe try to get back into the better graces with Wolf, and instead of just shooting us and putting us out of our misery, he instead tries to fight us with fisticuffs, because who doesn't want yet another tedious fight scene? We are quickly shoved into a bald-headed mini-boss fight here with Bonehead, and the good thing is he is not necessarily any more difficult than any other fight we've had. Honestly, he's a lot easier than Sandman was, just because he doesn't spam his special move. And while we might be slightly distracted by Emma in the foreground almost being shot, yeah, we quickly get the better of Bonehead. Thing is, though, that while Bonehead has been, I guess, pretty much a very loyal servant to Wolf throughout the game, you can only kick a hurt dog so many times before it decides to bite back. And it's in Bonehead's current disgraced state that I guess he has finally had enough of the down-talking from his boss, Wolf. And I guess he does have somewhat good reason. I mean, a lot of all this seemed to just go south for their operation once Emma was brought into the equation. And from Bonehead's point of view, that is entirely Wolf's fault. I mean, if they had never taken Emma hostage, never kidnapped her, I mean, they never would have had Matthew's attention turned to them, and, well, Sheriff Morgan, I'm sure, would have never uncovered anything about their illegal operation, so they would have been flying high. So it's clearly Wolf's fault that he became so enamored with Emma that things just went so horribly bad. So there is a mention of a betrayal there from some additional parties. Just, yeah, before we can get any more information on that, Bonehead's light is quickly snuffed out. And it's also at this point that Wolf has just had enough of all the melodrama. He's got other places to be right now. Though he probably would have done well to do a little double tap on Bonehead, who manages to get the last laugh before. Yeah, Wolf just goes completely apeshit on him. Now with our backup finally arrived, we are very suddenly shoved into an almost Virtucop-esque experience in QTE event, where we need to chase after Wolf through the burning wreckage that is Aston Farms. And I had to speed this up like 3 times the amount just because this sequence goes on for an extremely long amount of time. Made even longer by the sudden appearance of the bar's bodyguard, who I don't think we ever learned beforehand, but apparently his name is Blackhand, which I guess he could either be Native American or just inherently evil, but it doesn't really matter, because he's dead. And after clipping outside the railing for just a little bit and pumping what I feel is probably 50 to 60 bullets into Wolf, I think we might finally have him cornered up on the roof of the farmhouse. Now, your initial assumption might be that he is gasping from all the holes in ventilation that we have put into his body. But instead, that seems to have just been a ruse to get Matthew a little bit closer and to drop his guard so he could be shot in the face. But the gods have smiled on us yet again, because Wolf is finally out of bullets after, I think, dropping every bullet he had into Bonehead. But the real reveal here is that he seems to have been delving into his own product, and maybe his decision-making so far has been fueled by this very dangerous hallucinogen. He is just popping like candy. So, I guess that Dr. Samuel maybe didn't give us the full extent to what this drug epoch can do. I guess it's something akin to angel dust, because it's got some hallucinogenic properties, but it also has just strength heightening properties, endurance increasing in properties. It's a magical super drug with very dangerous side effects. And while Wolf wants to entice us into this world of hallucinogenic grandeur, we already know that Matthew's a pretty square peg, and he probably has dopes for dopes tattooed somewhere on his body. Now, while I'm all for a philosophical discussion, and while you can probably reach some higher planes of knowing by indulging in some forms of recreational pharmaceuticals, being on top of a burning building with a gun-wielding psychopath is probably not anyone you should ever try to indulge the philosophical discussion with. And in fact, good old pragmatic Matthew wants to have absolutely zero to do with this fucking nonsense right now. And we're not even going into the pedantry that we don't care that it's not Christian God or Buddha. We just want Emma back, and we want to not deal with any more of this nonsense. Though in the end, it almost seems like he's making some references to that mysterious force Mizzurna that seems to have control over the entire town. In the end, maybe all this, the death journey ritual, the drugs, the murder, all these bad things, they are somehow interconnected. Just maybe we need a better source of knowledge on all that than drug dealing, human trafficking, murderous Wolf here. And once he realizes there's just no way to change Matthew's mind and bring him over to the dark side, Wolf decides it is finally time for us to fight. And welcome to the last, the final boss fight of the game, and probably the hardest fight that I think I've ever had to do in a video game. Yeah, the AI for Wolf is tenacious, smart. His attacks are mostly not that bad, but that knife, if he connects with that knife, it does about 40 to 50% of your health, and yeah, it's a very small attack. I will honestly say that this fight took me about 40 minutes to actually get done. But still, we managed to persevere, have our rooftop burning building showdown with a knife-wielding, drug-dealing psychopath, and while Wolf does try to have his final horror movie villain moment of popping up even though we thought he was down, someone was nice enough to take care of him for us. Because we definitely need to turn our attention to poor Emma. Seems, though, that after all this time that she's been imprisoned and kidnapped by Wolf, that he's just been pumping her full of epoch, and yeah, she's become pretty drug addicted to it. And much like Wolf was coming down from his high and suffering tremendous pain, yeah, Emma is kind of suffering from the same thing right now. In the end, even though we managed to save Emma and, I guess, put an end to the drug ring in town, I still don't really feel like this is a victory for us. I mean, Emma is now addicted to drugs. She is probably horribly traumatized by almost being put into, I guess, white slavery / prostitution under Wolf. There's just been so many people whose lives have been turned upside down by all the events of this last week. I mean, the richest, most prominent member of the town society, Dennis Aston. I mean, well, he's been murdered. His business has just been rendered asunder. His son, Mel, probably doesn't know what to do. Then you also have Father Barton, now dead, revealed to be, abusive and kind of psychotic in his own way. His daughter, dead. I mean, those are two of probably the most prominent figures in town. Not to mention, now that Emma is addicted to drugs, her father, the mayor, probably has to deal with a lot of backlash from that. I mean, it's good that Emma is going to survive all this, but yeah, I think there's a whole lot of other ramifications, a whole lot of other ripples just that the town is going to be feeling going forward for months, maybe even years. Still, I guess I can appreciate Matthew is relatively alive and safe. After the burning building, the gun shooting, the stabbing, he has managed to survive all of that. And honestly, if it wasn't for that random person that just kind of shot Wolf there at the very end, he would have been a goner. So it's good that the police managed to get in there and shoot Wolf. Though it turns out that, no one in the sheriff's department actually made it into the farmhouse. I guess that could mean that it was probably Dr. James. I mean, we never did actually see him since he was coming in through another area of the farm. Still, I would assume that if it was Dr. James, he would have kind of presented himself. Maybe there is yet another accomplice that was working with Wolf in all this. Still, Dr. James right now Dr. James and Hudson are escorting Emma to the hospital. And Matthew, with his concern that there is another accomplice, definitely wants to get there and make sure that nothing happens to Emma. Because while I feel like we've taken care of the Wolf and Bonehead drug deal angle, I kind of feel like I'm forgetting some major plot point that also had something to do with Emma on this night. As it turns out, Matthew's suspicions are very much founded. The ambulance with Emma never made it to the hospital. And just as quickly as we managed to free Emma from one dangerous situation, she's now stuck and trapped in yet another horrible, horrible situation. So, while Sheriff Morgan is off to the hospital, it only really strikes Matthew right now that there was someone with another interest in Emma besides just, I guess, prostitution. And yeah, it's the death journey ritual that has to happen on this very night in Barrows Forest. Things have managed to come completely full circle from that very Christmas Eve just 7 days ago. Back in these mysterious woods where God only knows what has happened over so many years. And as we already previously saw in the hospital just a couple of hours ago, Cohen is already back up on his feet. And this helpful forest warlock is more than willing to give us a little bit of backup and hopefully try to stop the ritual from happening again. We can only hope that we can make it in time before history ends up repeating itself. The good thing for us is that Cohen, much like ourselves, pretty much already know that that big tree where the ritual initially attempted to happen on the 24th is indeed where we need to be heading right now. And from our initial bear hunt with Cohen, I do know a little bit of a shortcut to get up there. It does take a little bit of maneuvering to get around some of these more treacherous trees. It is a little bit tense, though, if you do manage to lose the little footpath you're going on, that, you know, everything starts to look the same when you're surrounded by all these trees, but just like that, we find ourselves not only at the big tree, but also the missing Emma. That's good news for us that she is not dead or anything just yet, so the ritual still has not happened, which is just super great. And what with Cohen here, we should be mostly fine. I mean, he has a gun. So things are definitely looking up, I'd say. At least until we find out who the true mastermind behind all of this turns out to be. And that, rather unexpectedly, turns out to be Dr. James. Now, while your suspicions about Dr. James might have increased within, the last day or so, it's pretty well not telegraphed that, yeah, he's he's the one behind almost fucking everything in the game. I mean, while Wolf was doing his underlying evil deeds of circulating drugs throughout the town and everything, it turns out that that old Dr. James here was the one that was making the epoch in the first place, and that he was actually the one pulling wolf strings all along to, I guess, get people addicted to the epoch to then in turn get them ready and primed to commit the death journey ritual. I mean, as we've already found out, that you do have to be in a certain drugged, almost half-dead state to be even starting the ritual. And then you have to have, I guess, some level of disillusionment or some level of questioning your own existence. But yeah, like the entire reason that all this stuff really was happening was, yeah, Dr. James was trying to perform the ritual, gain immortality and all this just otherworld knowledge, and yeah, the real hero of the story was the bear that attacked them. If it wasn't for that bear coming in and just attacking Dr. James and coming after, I guess, Katie and Emma, the ritual would have already happened, and probably Katie and Emma would have died on that very night. And the only thing that kind of threw a further monkey wrench into everything was that Wolf ended up kind of double-crossing Dr. James here, taking Emma for himself, and that's inevitably why Dr. James ended up shooting Wolf and Bonehead, and well, also in turn why he was also helping us all this time. Yeah, he ended up needing to seem a lot less suspicious, so he always kind of pushed us in the right direction. And it was through all this help that he was always waiting somewhere off in the shadows, just following our trail as we kind of uncovered the entire plot. Now, while Dr. James tries to present his whole horrible scheme as somewhat altruistic by trying to save Emma and Kathy from their horrible lives, it really, honestly, is all just a massive power play from Dr. James's end. He is wrapped up in this very grandiose picture of knowledge and otherworldly schemes that he could be indulging in if he was only able to escape this mortal coil and reach that mythical Mizzurna to get all the forbidden fruits of knowledge. And he cares absolutely nothing about anyone that he has to step on to reach that unknown plateau. Matthew, for all of his efforts, though, is trying to just pound reality into Dr. James's head. It's just that even trying to remind him about the fact that Cougar died in this very forest after the police had cornered him, that he died with nothing, Dr. James just does not care. In his mind, Cougar is just working through him now. He's just a conduit for the otherworldly forces that just kind of exist within the Barrows Woods here. He assumes that Matthew just does not understand the grander scheme, and that if he had just opened his eyes and gave the Death Journey ritual a try, he could have been given the keys to the universe. Just that at this point, it's a bit too little too late to try to even begin to convince Matthew that Dr. James is in any way in the right state of mind. I mean, Matthew must know that life is a fleeting thing, but Matthew himself knows that you have to appreciate life while you're living it. That you can't just assume that there's some other world or afterlife waiting for you. Still, it seems our discussion on all things related to the Death Journey ritual are over. And the only real reason that Dr. James has not just immediately shot Matthew is because he still has that very important necklace. That's the final key that in Dr. James's mind is necessary for the Death Journey ritual to be fulfilled. Now Matthew, to his credit, thinks that he might be able to use the necklace as a bit of a bargaining chip with this clearly psychotic individual. It's just that, as we kind of already saw after Dr. James shot Bonehead, that even under the threat of losing such a valuable item, that Dr. James is actually a pretty crack shot. So for all of his bluster, it honestly seems incredibly pointless. And it almost seems like Matthew has finally reached the end. But in a whirlwind of action, Cohen manages to save us, just like so many other people had saved us over the course of the game. And it's finally time for Matthew to step up and put an end to all this madness. Yeah, Emma is still very much dealing with her own existential crises, and to make matters worse, even if she was already questioning her own existence, she's already had so many people just ingrain this feeling of inferiority, vulnerability, just that she is less than nothing in this world. I'm sure Matthew wants to do nothing more right now than to try to calm those inner voices that are just screaming at her. Just before he can do all of that, he does have to take care of Dr. James. Even though Dr. James is probably mortally wounded from that shotgun blast from Cohen, he's probably still riding high on the tales of the Epoch Dragon. Delusions of grandeur and hallucination just flitting through his mind as he feels that he is so very close to grabbing that Mizzurna and getting a handful of that forbidden knowledge. And while he does try to preach his gospel to poor Matthew here, yeah, Matthew has nothing but his own truth to delve into. And that's just the stark inevitability that all things must come to an end. And sadly, whatever reasoning that we might have had to say to Dr. James here, it's all going to fall on deaf ears. He is just too far gone. There you have it. Our long journey through Mizzurna Falls is finally at an end, and we have achieved what is considered to be the good ending for the game. Yeah, there are another 2 endings, which I will at least try to show off one of those endings in a bonus video. But yeah, Matthew, even though he was shot, he, I guess, was finally able to commune with the Mizzurna and gain all types of knowledge and hear the wonderful Eternity song in its full grandeur and some ethereal plane. But yeah, I feel like it's a very strong story with a very strong end. It does have a few laggy bits here and there. It definitely kind of spins its wheels at times, especially with all the red herrings it decides to throw at us. But just all in all, a very unique story, I would say. Definitely not beat for beat of Twin Peaks by any measure. I think it does share some elements, but definitely not exactly the same. But I think more than anything, it's just good to admire the amount of technological work that it went into this for a PS1 game. And I think even beyond all that, definitely the most props go out to Resident Evie for doing all the wonderful translation work, and also for Gemini for starting the ball rolling on getting an actual English patch going. Hopefully, someday in the future, people will be able to enjoy this game without having to just read my subtitles. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this trip through this very, very, very unique PS1 experience. And yeah, hopefully you will join me next time as we venture probably yet again into another somewhat unknown Japanese title going by the name of, I think, Dark Tales from the Lost Soul. Hopefully you will join me then, and I will see you next time.